Welcome to your community. This is your hometown. This is Walton Entertainment. This is where you can hear from the community and those making a difference. We explore topics, local festivals, arts and entertainment, and local news. For this program and much more, visit us online at yourlocalstream.com. That's yourlocalstream.com.
This is out way on the other side of county for me. I'm on the Loganville side. I think it's about an hour, almost an hour round trip for me.
Round trip.
Yeah. But I appreciate you guys coming out, and we have a lot of exciting things coming this year with the Master Gardener program. We're just going to work out here in the experiential garden, and we've got our plant sale preparations going on. So you know where we are now. Stay tuned for more updates, because as the weather gets warmer and the plants get a little more mature, we're going to have a lot more going on out here. And you can see we built a pavilion out here, so hopefully we can have some classes outside on nice days. So that's exciting. If you're not familiar with the Master Gardener program, we are an extension of Extension. We help, we work with our extension agents to bring university research on home gardens in Georgia to the community, and help educate folks on how to better enjoy their yards, how to have some environmental stewardship within your yard, how you can help support local ecosystems, biodiversity, and just grow really yummy vegetables and have butterflies and flowers and all the things that we enjoy outside, right? My name is Megan Paskin, and our talk today is going to be on companion planting. Most of my references will be to companions for vegetables or vegetable garden, but the same principles can apply to your perennial flower beds, your annuals, same type of companion pollinator plants. You can put those in all your seasonal gardens as well. As part of University of Georgia, we are an equal opportunity. And if you're not familiar, we'll kind of go through what is companion planting. It's kind of a broad range of things, and we'll kind of just break down the benefits of what we can incorporate in our garden to make our plants grow most efficiently, effectively, and have good tasting vegetables, and have to do less pest control. Okay, so companion planting is the intentional strategic pairing of different plant species to enhance your garden productivity, boost biodiversity, and manage pests naturally. So really, natural pest management is going to be one of the greatest benefits of our companion plantings. Here's an example of some companion planting in a vegetable garden. This doesn't look like your traditional farmer plot. This doesn't look like a lettuce farmer. Usually you'd see nice neat rows with nothing growing in between. But here this grower has, or gardener has incorporated flowers and herbs, different varieties of vegetables, and you can see there's a lot more diversity here and a lot better use of space. You can put a lot more in and get a lot more productivity from just a smaller square footage there. You can pick flowers and vegetables. Here's another example of companion planting. Looks very different. Not as diverse in color, but it is diverse in the plant species. So this is an example of the Three Sisters cropping method that was derived from some of the strategies of the Native Americans that grew corn, beans, and squash simultaneously. Using the beans to help return nitrogen to the soil for the high nitrogen feeding crops like corn, and then the squash trailing along the bottom of the rows to shade out weeds. So that's an example of using three different crops in one area, but benefiting all and not lowering any productivity. So monoculture is where you have, a cornfield, that's all one, mono. Polyculture is going to be a more diverse use of plants, plant species within your garden. So that's going to mimic a natural ecosystem. You see a meadow, it's not just one species of wildflower, it's not just one grass, it's a mix. So when we mimic these natural ecosystems, we create a more balanced garden. We're balancing the different types of plants, grasses, broadleaf. We're giving like habitats for some of our beneficial insects to take up residence. We're providing flowers for our pollinators. So we're going to try and mimic more of a natural ecosystem. And by creating that balance, hopefully having to put less inputs, less pesticides, less fertilizers, less herbicides into our garden. So some of the mutual benefits between the plants would be enhanced growth, improved flavor, and then some of the companion plants we're going to talk about have actually biochemical defense mechanisms against insects. And we can kind of confuse some of our pest insects and deter them. And again, biodiversity. It's a really important part of, your backyard is an ecosystem, whether you think about it that way or not. You mow the grass and you might think you have control over everything growing in your yard, and you choose this plant for that place because you think it looks nice. But every time you add a plant to your yard, you're adding something into the ecosystem. And you got to kind of think about, what is the effect of that? Am I benefiting native species, or is this something that's from a plant that's from Asia that maybe doesn't have any natural place here in Georgia, that's not really adding a benefit to my ecosystem? So native plants are going to be a great partner in your companion plantings. So here's an example of some sunflowers in a garden. I have this book here that I'll pass around in a little while. I have a few examples I'm going to show from there, but it's called Vegetables Love Flowers. And this lady, I'll have a clip at the end with the name of the book and the author. But she's a cut flower grower who also incorporates vegetables into her cut flower garden. So she kind of like does a row of vegetables and a row of cut flowers and a row of vegetables and a row of cut flowers. And in doing that, look at this scenario here. You have sunflowers that are attracting pollinators. Sunflowers are pretty low maintenance. They can take a lot of drought stress and not really get very wilty. And they can also provide structure if you wanted beans or something to grow up them. And they can shade too. If it's the middle of summer and you want to provide some shade to some more tender, like lettuces, things like that, you could grow those at the base. So it's not just pretty, but also serving a purpose within making those vegetables much more, you can use more space and have healthy vegetables. So with pest management, some of the methods are repelling pests, trap cropping, and attracting beneficial species. So we'll go through that in some further slides here. Soil health can also be improved with companion planting. We have certain types of legumes, beans, that will help fix nitrogen and make it an available form for your plants, and then hopefully you would have to put less fertilizer in. Also, soil structure can be a benefit of companion planting. If you plant beets or potatoes or some root vegetables in company with lettuces that are more shallow root, they can help break up this compacted soil, and those can be mutually beneficial as well. So think about soil structure. Talk about environmental stewardship and economical. Okay, we reduce the amount of work we have to do in the garden and the amount of money we have to put into it, and that to me equals more enjoyment. And you can do multi-use gardens. You can do cut flowers and vegetables. You can have your pollinator garden incorporated in your vegetable garden. You can enjoy the hummingbirds while picking your tomatoes. So win-win. And of course, tasty vegetables. So we're going to kind of go through the pest management side, which really to me is the greatest benefit of the companion planting. In my gardens at home, every year I've seen fewer and fewer pests. The more diversity of different native plants I incorporate close to where I plant my vegetables. Right now I have a raised bed, and then I have a pollinator garden in the center, and then another raised bed on the other side. So having pollinator plants close by your vegetable gardens is going to help. So for repelling pests, though, we do have some annual and type plants that you can put in the beds or in the rows with your vegetables. Because sometimes if you have a raised bed garden, you don't necessarily want to put perennial coneflower in your raised bed that you're going to be pulling potatoes and changing things out. It's kind of hard to work around that plant in the middle that you don't want to dig up. So I'll go through some that are more annual. But as far as biochemical pest suppression, so that's going to be where we talk about some plants that actually exude chemicals from their roots, from their leaves, from their flowers that suppress and repel pests. Insects find your vegetables through smell, through recognizing patterns on the leaves, colors, taste. So anything we can do to confuse those senses is going to help us deter our pests. Marigolds are a great example of a biochemical pest suppression. So here's a picture of, up in the corner, there's some root knot nematode damage. And studies have shown that there's a chemical called thiopene that the marigolds release into the soil, and it actually deters some species of nematodes, not all of them, there's a lot of them. So it's not a curative. From what I read, some of the studies were more promising as using like a marigold as a cover crop. So maybe you have a spring garden that you don't do much within the heat of the summer. Plant some marigolds, let them, release that chemical into the soil. Hopefully, scare all the nematodes away by the time you come back with your tomatoes in the fall. That's one really good plant partner is marigolds. Another one is lavender. So lavender is a perennial, so you would probably want to plant that like either on the border of your vegetable garden or very near to it, so you wouldn't have to be digging around it. So this first picture here is Spanish lavender. And this one is going to be English lavender. They have slightly different looking blooms. I found the Spanish lavender easier to grow, a little more prolific, but it just kind of sprawls, whereas the English lavender is more of just like a mound, but it does have more of the tall stalks that you can cut, to hang up in your bathroom and have that smell. But these are also great pollinator plants, but their leaves produce a fragrance, and their flowers produce a fragrance common to us, but unpleasant to plants, or to pests. Mosquitoes, fleas, moths, some of these flying insects, they really don't like the smell of lavender. Rosemary, and pretty much most plants in this salvia genus, there's a lot of different salvias out there. They all have a very strong smell, like when you rub the leaves. So they're going to be an evergreen, woody, perennial shrub that you would put close to your vegetable garden. And they repel garden pests like beetles, carrot flies, slugs, snails. So they don't like the smell of rosemary. So those are great, and then you can use it in your cooking. I think I've seen aphids on my rosemary, but Just otherwise, I don't really have any. When I go to pick my rosemary, there's not usually much taking bites out of it. So anything you might see in your garden that the pests aren't going after in your herb garden, that's probably one that's got that really aromatic smell that's confusing your pest insects. Basil, another great plant to grow for your kitchen, but it also deters aphids and mites. It's great to grow near tomato plants. Some even say it's helpful in deterring tomato cornworms. So anytime I have a pepper or tomato garden, I plop basil around, and it's easy to grow. We usually sell a ton of it at our plant sale if you want any. So basil is a great one. If you have a window box, you can plant it near your doors or windows to discourage crawling insects from coming inside. So chrysanthemums, this is another perennial that you can grow nearby. They can actually, the petals of the flower of the chrysanthemum contains pyrethrum, which is actually an active ingredient in some of our organic pesticides. So I caution folks, like though this plant has the repellent properties, it's really just in the flower, and the period of time that this plant actually flowers is somewhat minimal. So I wouldn't expect any of these to be curatives, but I mean, if you can have flowers and you can have pest control, why not do both, right? So I looked up which species of chrysanthemum had the most, or the highest concentration of the pyrethrin in it, and it was this Dalmatian chrysanthemum, which kind of just looks like a little daisy there. So that one's worth a try if you're going for pest control in your pollinator garden. Mint. Mint has a strong smell, so it's helpful for repelling cabbage moths and fleas, and you do have to be careful though. Mints are very prolific. They will really spread, so if you can, put them in a container. You know, just plop them in between some of your rows in the garden. So they're also great pollinators, so I really encourage you, let your herbs go to flower, because a lot of our herbs like rosemary and mint, lemon balm, chives, all of those have beautiful flowers that are really attractive to pollinators as well. There's your mint. Garlic, I just planted garlic. I did it around the outside, about every 3 rows of my raised beds. I mean, some of us like garlic, some of us don't. We don't like to smell like garlic, but the insects don't like it. So I see Japanese beetles listed, and I say, well, it's worth a try. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we can repel aphids and cabbage loopers. Cabbage loopers are a big pest. They pretty much will chew on the foliage of beans and cabbage and anything they can get their hands on. So plop in a few garlic here and there. It is a longer growing plant, so that garlic kind of has to stay in the soil for a long time before you can harvest it. But just kind of like tuck it in a corner, put it on the outside of the row. It's a pretty upright plant, so it's not going to take up a lot of space, get in the way of your other vegetables. So there's something you can try as well. There's a picture of some garlic. And it's pretty easy to grow, and I mean, I use garlic every day, I feel, so give it a shot if you haven't tried garlic. They have some at Tractor Supply, and the Tractor Supply in Grayson, they had garlic seed out with the potato seeds this year. I was happy to see that. Catnip, it's similar to mint, but if you have cats, that might not be helpful, because then the cats might just come and trample your garden trying to get to it. But it says that it's good at deterring mosquitoes, cockroaches, termites, so maybe near the foundations of your house. But in general, if it's got that strong smell, it's going to help confuse pest insects from getting close to your vegetables. That's a picture of catnip. We talked about marigolds, but they also have great flowers that attract pollinators and other beneficials, that they can help repel aphids. Aphids are always an issue in my garden, so I try to do marigolds around the outside, marigolds as a cover crop. I mean, my marigolds reseed themselves now every year, so I'm just kind of gardening around them. They're already coming up from last fall, so I'm just plopping my lettuce around the marigolds at this point. I need to find a lower growing marigold, because the ones I had have turned into bushes like this tall, and they kind of, crowd out my other vegetables. And they're so pretty, I don't like to cut them back, but yeah, a lower growing marigold would be more helpful, I think, in my garden. So this is kind of similar to the one I have. But they're very easy to grow, so if you have a garden that you're just maybe not taking care of this year, and you want to keep the weeds out, sprinkle a bunch of marigold flowers. That's a great cover crop. Keep the pests out, keep the weeds out, and it's pretty.
It comes up pretty quickly too, doesn't it?
What's that?
It comes up pretty quickly, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, They're not hard to germinate. Nasturtiums are great. Edible flower. They're annual. They're just an interesting looking leaf. It kind of looks like a little lily pad. Yellow, red, orange. They're fun to grow. They're not as much of a bully as the marigolds can be. You can kind of just put one here, one there, and they don't spread too much. But they can deter whiteflies, squash bugs, cucumber beetles. I have read also that they attract aphids. So if you already have an aphid issue and you want to attract your aphids away from, your peppers or tomatoes, then, put some nasturtiums on the outside and that would help. But they also are attractive for beneficial insects. They have nice flower that some of the pollinators and our bees visit. Lemon thyme, there's a pretty variegated variety there, so that's just a kind of a nice color contrast. A lot of our vegetable gardens are just green, to have a little contrast, to have an herb, to have also pest control qualities. It has like a lemony kind of smell to it. Sage, sage is a good kitchen herb garden staple, but also in that salvia genus. So it's good for cabbage worms, beetles, and carrot rust flies. I don't know if I had a carrot rust fly before, but sometimes with flies you don't even really know. They just kind of come and go, and you don't know that you have them until you find damage from the larva. All right, another form of pest management we can incorporate with our companion plants is trap cropping. And this is a method that's utilized by commercial growers as well. There's quite a bit of research from Extension on trap cropping. It involves growing plants that attract or draw insects away from your main crop. So just like people, we have personal preferences, we have our favorite things to eat. Insects are the same way. Some of them, there's just going to be some varieties of squash that they are going to like better, that they like the smell of, they like the taste of, for whatever reason they prefer it. And we found that Blue Hubbard squash is a variety of squash, and I'll show you on the next slide, that some of our squash pests really like. But another example is here with the diamondback moth, which I'm sure just about everybody's probably seen this little tiny moth in their garden. Now, not even maybe thought it was a moth because it's kind of more slender shaped, but that it lays eggs in your cabbage and makes that tiny little caterpillar worm that's like half an inch long. And that is your diamondback moth larva. And they're horrible on cabbage, collards, broccoli, any of your cruciferous vegetables. So you can draw them away from your cabbage by planting collards. Having collards already established, maybe, larger in another part of the garden, and then plant your cabbage and hope that they go to that collard patch and not your cabbage. Because, we can only eat so much collards, right? It grows all winter.
It does. Add salt really, and it just keeps growing. You pick it and you get more. So.
Yeah. So I'm talking about the blue Hubbard squash. So this is a great trap crop if you enjoy growing any kind of cucurbit or squash, your summer squash, your zucchini, your watermelons, your cantaloupes, your pumpkins. All of those are gonna have similar pest problems. Big ones are squash bugs and squash vine borer. Both of those can give us some trouble in the garden. If you have grown squash for several years, you've probably encountered a squash vine borer. The first year, maybe not, but in consecutive years of growing squash, they've gotten worse and worse every year in my garden. The squash vine borer is a small larval stage of a moth. The moth actually lays the eggs on the stem of your squash, and as soon as it hatches, that caterpillar bores into those straw-like large stems on your squash plant. And then they just live in there and eat your plant from the inside out. So you might not even see them, know you have them, until all of a sudden your beautiful summer squash that is just so close to being harvested just wilts and just dies. And then as you're tearing it apart, you see all these little worms inside the stems. So that's your squash vine borer. It's a very hard pest to treat with a pesticide and to catch it and interrupt the life cycle that way. Researchers have found that if you start some of these blue Hubbard squashes about 2 weeks early. Now in this case, this is a commercial grower who's started the squash on the ends of the row, the blue Hubbard squash. So this is going to be blue Hubbard squash, this might be butternut squash, that might be zucchini, something down there. And by doing that, they're attracting all the pests to that early planting of blue Hubbard squash. And then they can actually say, we're not going to eat that blue Hubbard squash. We're going to treat only that blue Hubbard squash with our pesticides. We're only going to spray those, and then we'll knock out the pest on it. We don't plan to eat it, and the ones we plan to eat should be a little better off. In my garden scenario, I think I'd probably plant these on the other side of the yard instead of just right in the same row. Just because, in my garden I don't necessarily want to bring pesticides in where I might be building up my beneficials. Maybe I just have like a designated area, like this is the trap crop area, this is the spray zone, that kind of thing. Or you can just destroy those crops. You could, once you see all the pests on them, just eliminate them, bag them up, burn them, where that pest interrupts the life cycle. They don't keep reproducing. So certainly worth a shot if you like your squash. It also says here that the spotted striped cucumber beetle is very attracted. So cucumber beetles are your defoliators that chew on the leaves of your squash plant. And your squash bugs are your stink bug looking insects that like squash. And none of us like those, like the leaf-footed bugs and the squash bugs. Those are never fun. So if we can draw them away from where we're working, where we're eating, that's really ideal. And of course, attracting beneficial insects. Beneficials are organisms that help garden plants by assisting in pollination, pest predation, or pest parasitism. Technically, some of our bird species are beneficials. Your blue birds that are out nesting right now, that would be considered a beneficial. They're going to be catching insects and feeding them to their young here soon. Just like the birds are helping eat the insects, we have other insects that eat insects. So we have good bugs that we can actually provide a habitat for and encourage them to get as established as our pest species are, and really just kind of balance that out in our ecosystem. Here's an example of our pollinators. That's our bees and our butterflies, our wasps. We have a lot of fly species that are also pollinators. A beneficial insect would be a praying mantis. So many of our wasps are also predators. Usually adult wasps, they eat nectar or pollen from flowers. They're pollinators. But when they're young, the larvae they're carnivores. So this wasp here is dragging off a caterpillar to put in its nest, where it will then lay the eggs, and when those when the wasp larvae hatch out, they consume that caterpillar. So a lot of people here, I don't like wasps, wasps everywhere near my house. But they're really the good guys. So they're good in the garden. Our lady beetles, the larval and adult stage, both eat aphids, so they're aphid carnivores. And we have parasitism going on in the garden too. So we have beneficial wasps who parasitize some of our pest insects, like aphids, like caterpillars. Here we have a wasp mama laying her eggs inside a live aphid, and her young will go through their whole life cycle and come out the other end of that poor little unsuspecting aphid. Okay, so she's really helping us out, because aphids can be a really hard pest to control. They're just so prolific. They just, once they get going, they don't stop. And you know, you could get rid of them in the garden, but then they fly off the trees, and there's just never eliminating all the aphids in your yard. So these guys, you won't even see this wasp. It's so small. It's like smaller than a housefly. You won't even know. You would never notice it. But it's when you provide the right environment for them to flourish, then they will control the aphid population. I've seen it in my garden. You'll see these little, they're called aphid mummies. It's just like the exoskeleton. It's like a little shell of an aphid. That's a parasitized aphid. So those are really great. The adults are pollinators, and then they lay their eggs inside the aphids, and the aphids obviously eventually die. And they can slow down the aphid population pretty quickly. This is an example of a parasitized hornworm. So those little white things are cocoons from another parasitic wasp that lays her eggs inside the caterpillar, and then when they go to turn from the larva to the adult stage, they make these little cocoons that are attached to the hornworm. And then eventually it does kill the worm, so the worm doesn't actually turn into an adult and then lay eggs and continue the life cycle. And then you can see how many good guys are made if each one of those little cocoons makes another parasitic wasp that goes on to lay 100 eggs. You can a numbers game, you can beat these pests with the good guys. So how do we get them to stay? How do we keep these beneficials in our garden? Oh, well, here's another one. This one here is a tiger beetle. You probably, when you're working your garden, you see little beetles that like run really fast across the ground. They don't really take off and fly, they're just gonna run. Those are ground beetles. A lot of those are predatory. They're just gonna eat whatever moves. This is a tiger beetle with a looper. We have hoverflies, the little bee-looking bugs that hover in front of your face. You've seen those before. Their larvae actually eat aphids and other white flies, other kind of piercing, sucking insects that might be sucking the life out of your plant. What else do we have? We have lacewings, and the mantids, the praying mantis I talked about. Spiders also are good. And then we talked about what the parasitoids are, that they lay their eggs inside other host insects and prevent them from developing to adulthood.
Hagen, are the Juro spiders good? I mean, are they, I hate them and kill them.
They're good if they're not in my way when I'm walking through the
Right,
garden.
they hit me in the face and scare me to death.
I don't often see them in the vegetable garden. I see them around my house and in the trees, but I don't often see them really taking up residence there.
Yeah.
More of the spiders you'll find in a vegetable garden are not your web spiders. They're more of the ones that they search out their prey, they crawl around, they hunt, like a lion. They're not really web spiders.
Make the webs on the sticks of the tomatoes or whatever they're just.
Yeah, they're not going to be selective. If they're a web spider, it's whatever flies into the web, that's what they're going to eat. But some of your other garden spiders that don't make a web, they're actually searching out on your plants for any of the pests that are there. They're there because they know the pests are there.
Would you kill a Juro if it was in your face in the garden? I can't help myself.
My kids like taking a broom and they just collect them all up and they put them in a big jar and so they eventually don't make it. I don't have a problem with Jaros in my garden. But we can create environments that are hospitable to these predators and these parasitoids by having a pollinator garden, having that blooms as year-round as you can do. Spring, summer, fall. You want to time your blooms so that they have a constant source of nectar, pollen for your wasps, for your bees, for your lace wings. They will also feed on nectar and pollen. So, when I'm talking about a pollinator garden, I'm not talking about like lilies and irises. Those are not great pollinator plants. I'm talking about more of like your asters, your like your black-eyed Susans, your more daisy-looking flowers, a lot of native plants. But even your dills and your mints, those will, and oregano, a lot of those will have enough flowers. Zinnias and sunflowers are good. Anything that has kind of like that bright yellow center full of pollen and the petals are on the outside. Things like tulips and daffodils and your bulb plants are not necessarily great pollinator plants. But to have blooming as long as you can, that will keep your beneficials there. As long as they have a constant food source, they have protection, they're not getting sprayed with pesticides. So the whole balance we're going for is that the good guys make it so we don't have to spray pesticides, because if we spray pesticides, we might take out the good guys. And I do want to caution, be wary also of mosquito season is coming up, and a lot of our mosquito sprays will take out our good beneficial insects, like our bees, our pollinators. It's kind of a broad spectrum product that they use. It kind of just kills anything that flies. So if you can be wary of that, if you do have a pest control company that sprays for mosquitoes, keep them away from your garden. We have some resources on good organic IPM approaches for mosquito management as well, if you're interested. But yeah, don't forget. So, and once you start to see some of these beneficial insects in your garden, I had a praying mantis like this big last year, and it's like every year I see more and more of them, because I've just created that ecosystem where they said, okay, I'm gonna stay and I'm gonna lay my eggs and I'm gonna come back every year, and they're native to the area, so they should flourish so long as I don't get in the way, right? With pesticides and keep moving things around and taking their flowers away. So pollinators, obviously we need, because some of our vegetable plants need pollination in order to make vegetables. Your squashes, your watermelons, they need bees. You're not gonna get a squash without bees, unless you're out there doing it manually, and that's not fun. So you need them to pollinate your plants, but also a lot of the adult life stages of some of these predatory and parasitic species, they need flower, pollen, nectar sources. And again, variety. Some insects are very specific about what variety of plant flower they visit, some are not. Some are just generalists. As long as it's got pollen, I'm good. Like for one of the the wasps that visit and parasitize the aphids, they actually visit white clover flowers. So leaving maybe a no-mow patch or a little natural island in your garden where natural grass and clover and other species of plants can come to flower without mowing will actually bring more of those beneficial insects in too. And again, the pollen-rich herbs are great. And a lot of the herbs like dill, cilantro, if you let them go to flower, then they'll go to seed, and then you won't even have to plant them next year because they'll be right in the soil. I also like to point out that if you grow squash or you're new to growing squash and you see this in your garden, this isn't not necessarily a disease, it's a lack of pollination. So the bees maybe have not shown up, maybe you don't have very many bees. I see this a lot at the beginning of the season. Every squash plant has male and female flowers. The female flowers have this young squash attached to it, and the bee has to visit the male flower and then go to the female flower for us to have a squash that grows not like that. So I will get like calls and texts about, why is my squash not, I got a disease, and it's like, well, you need some bees. And you can get out there with a paintbrush and yourself, pollinate until the bees show up. But this is, again, not a disease, just a lack of pollination. Some of our bumblebees, like this here, they're the only ones that can do buzz pollination. where they actually vibrate the flower at a certain frequency with their wings, that flower then releases the pollen. Our tomato plants are like that. They only really respond to that buzz pollination from a bumblebee. So here we have a picture of the roots of a bean plant. We're going to talk about nutrient cycling, so incorporating some of the plants that help return nutrients to the soil. Nitrogen fixation is what happens in these little nodules on the bean plant. So that's your beans, your peas. If you grow peanuts, that's a legume also. Vetch, if you wanted to use a cover crop, vetch is a legume that will help return nitrogen to the soil. We don't grow any alfalfa here, but that's also a legume. But it'll help fix nitrogen from the environment and make it in an available form for your plant's roots there. So when some of our vegetable crops like corn are heavy nitrogen feeders, they're great companions. It would take me all day to go through every plant and what's a good companion, so I provided you with these charts. Look those over when you get some time. You'll see on here that this chart here I liked because it wasn't just vegetables companions with other vegetables, it has flowers in it too. So like Elysium, some calendula. Oh, I love calendula. That's another edible flower. It's like a little daisy looking flower, very easy to grow. It says, it has sunflowers in here for providing shade, and so when they provide shade, they also can help your soil moisture. The more you shade the soil, the longer it stays moist. Some like the taller plants like corn, they can provide structure for your beans or whole beans to climb and things like that. So think about the height, the structure, the needs of each one of your plants and how you can partner it with something that's gonna make, you can grow 3 things in one row. Clover is also another example of something you can use as a cover crop in the fall to keep your weeds down, but then also return nutrients to the soil when you're not using your garden beds. Right now I'm probably going to be planting potatoes and then peas together. Potatoes are pretty low growing, and then I can trellis my peas up and maximize my space. So again, environmental stewardship. We want you to have fun in the garden, but we also want to have healthy ecosystems. And it might seem like you're not just making little changes, but it makes a big difference. There's quite a ripple effect when we're talking about microorganisms in the soil all the way up to, the birds. So you have more beneficial insects, that you have more food source for the birds. They're gonna come, it's gonna be a lot more enjoyable. I also try and put like structures in my gardens and raised beds, put a tomato stake. The bluebirds like to perch on something to look for insects. That's a good way to encourage birds to come and take care of your worms and beetles. So we talked about what monoculture was and that we want to diversify. Native plants are really going to be great to incorporate into your pollinator gardens. They are generally easier to grow. They're generally, if they're not perennial, they'll reseed themselves. They're meant to grow here, so incorporate them whenever you can. Growers Outlet has a great variety of native plants. Just make sure when you go, you don't always get something that's blooming. You gotta time your blooms. You want spring bloomers, summer bloomers, fall bloomers, stagger them out. And they do a great job saying, bloom times on the labels, so you can kind of map that out in your garden. We talked about having beneficial insects. With your perennial pollinator garden, you're going to have that year-round habitat. So when the eggs from that praying mantis, it gets warm enough and they start to hatch, they already know, I've got a space where I'm safe. I don't need to move on. Here's a life cycle of a lacewing. Here's the adult lacewing. You might never have seen that lacewing in your garden, but you've probably seen these look like little Q-tips hanging off the leaf. That's a lacewing egg, and then the larva here is a very voracious predator of aphids. It'll consume hundreds and hundreds of aphids before it pupates and then becomes an adult. In the adult form, they're mostly nectar pollen feeders. I think they can eat aphids too if they want, but you want to be able to have those populations of beneficials returning every year. And I've seen this in my garden, that I have more and more every year, and it's like I'm out there looking for them now. And it makes you more conscious when you say, approach a pest problem. You don't necessarily say, okay, I have a problem, what can I spray for it? You then say, oh, well, I just saw that praying mantis on my milkweed, and I want to be careful, I don't want to kill the good guys. So it kind of changes your mentality of how to approach problems, and you just kind of monitor, see how well the natural ecosystem can balance. I didn't have to really, I think I sprayed for worms once last year on my tomatoes, and that's unheard of. I don't know who took the worms. I don't know which beneficial was responsible, but I had very few worms. I have a product that I use that's very targeted to worms. It's a biological that is derived from a bacterium in the soil, that if I do ever need to take care of the worms, it only would eliminate caterpillar species of insects, and it doesn't hurt the beneficials. And I think that's the only thing I applied all year, was like maybe for some fall armyworms and hornworms, and maybe just one bed of tomatoes. But every year I've had seen reduced need for pest control on my part.
What is it you're using?
So I'll write it over here. Excuse me. So the product is Dipel. The active ingredient is Bt, Bacillus thuringiensis, and it's available to the home gardener, but also used commercially in organic farms. So that's pretty much the only one I still keep in my arsenal, because the caterpillar worms seem to cause the most damage in my fruiting vegetables and my leafy greens. The beetles and the defoliators, they kind of come and go, but I'm not trying to sell my food at the farmer's market or anything. If it's got a little chew out of it here or there, I just cut that part off and I send it to the salad. So, and that's really where the organic gardening works best, is in the home garden, where you're not trying to please anybody but yourself. And you don't care that the lettuce isn't the same color as it is in the store. If it doesn't make a full head, it's still good chopped up in the salad. So you can pick off wash your aphids off, and still eat your vegetables. If a worm has gone all the way through my tomato, it's kind of ruined. But so, that's kind of where I draw the line. If you're in my tomatoes, then you gotta go.
You had some great peppers last year that you had as an example, and it's like there was a little spot and you just, lop it off and
Yeah, like your stink bugs, they're a nuisance, your leaf-footed bugs, but they really just have a tiny little straw-like mouth part that they just suck a little bit here and there from the plant. They don't necessarily kill your plant. They don't make your pepper inedible. They can be cosmetic little spots, but again, if you're not trying to sell it, if you're not worried about what your neighbor thinks when you give them a bunch of peppers, then just say, hey, I didn't have to spray anything. This is great. And then now I get to grow flowers in with my vegetables. So another great benefit is that you can just put way more into one bed than just doing rows. And when you're doing raised beds, you don't really want to do rows because you put all that soil in there and you want to use all the surface area you got. I just did I call it my salad bar. I'm kind of an impatient gardener, and I don't like the little lettuce seeds are so small, and the radish seeds are so small. They're kind of old seed too, so I wasn't really sure on the germination. So I just kind of sprinkled some bib lettuce, some kale, some beets. I did some garlic around the outside, dill around the outside, and just a whole bunch of carrots. I just kind of sprinkled it all in there, and just spinach. Thinking, I'm just gonna cut it, put it in a salad. It doesn't have to get huge, lettuce this tall is just as good as lettuce this tall. So that's kind of, it'll die back come June, and I'll be ready to put, tomatoes in April. So, just have fun with it.
Sounds good to me.
So less herbicides, yes. The more you can cover your garden space with other companion plants, the less soil's going to see the sun, and when the soil sees the sun, the weeds just come out of nowhere. And then we don't want to spray any pesticides, so we want to spend money on that. This is a great book I can send around for if you're interested in doing cut flowers with vegetables. I can pass that around, you can finger through it. She also does, some arrangements. She does some garden plans in the back, like bed for spring, summer, fall. So I got this book on Amazon if you're interested. Pass it around. And then, of course, tasty vegetables, herbs, and I have an herb garden, but I've more and more every year been incorporating herbs in my vegetable beds and vegetable rows and on the borders, and they just keep coming back. So it's they don't want to stay contained anymore. They seem to grow better just volunteer in my vegetable garden than they do where I want them in the herb garden. So incorporate those flowering herbs wherever you can. And just diversity of colors and textures and smells, that just makes your time out there, even if you're weeding, more enjoyable, in my opinion. And then flowers, butterflies, hummingbirds. Your hummingbirds are not necessarily attracted to the same type of flower as some of our pollinators. They like more of the trumpet-shaped flowers and things, but they're also pollinators, and they're going to want to visit a garden that's established, that's blooming during their whole migration, and that's pesticide-free. We love our butterflies. There's our hummingbird. Here are some resources that you can use. All of our University of Georgia home garden publications can be found at this extension.edu publications website. So if you're ever needing to Google something, maybe start with UGA publications before Google, because that's going to be more regionally appropriate material. This is stuff that research has been done here in Georgia. The book I listed here is the one that's coming around by Lisa Mason Ziegler. She has also a website. It's all in the book there, but she has a website and a mailing list too, that she can send you emails about our different cut flowers and vegetable garden things. The Georgia Pest Management Handbook. If you don't have one of these, never seen one of these, this is a great resource. You can buy it for $20. And I have the website on the next slide. Or you can just go online, there's a free PDF. You can find it here under the publications. You would just say Georgia Pest Management Handbook. You want the home and garden edition, because there's also a commercial agriculture edition. You want the home garden edition. And this has all of your organic products that you might use in organic gardening, such as the BT, the dipel I talked about. The dipel is not necessarily one you find on the shelves of your big box stores, but you can order it online. You don't need a pesticide license for it. It's very easy to mix up. It's just add 2 teaspoons to a gallon, shake it up, spray it. The worms have to consume that product in order to die. So you have to spray it on the surface where they're feeding. And then, as long as it doesn't rain and wash it right off, it's pretty effective. Within a week, you'll see reduced worm populations there. And all the commercial organic vegetable growers use that product. It's really the most effective organic pesticide, in my opinion. And very safe, very comfortable spraying it on my plants and giving the veggies to my kids. Also in here is some turf management, how herbicide recommendations. So any kind of pest problem you'd have in your home garden, it'll list the products, it'll list different ways to employ the IPM strategies. That's your integrated pest management. And then we have a help desk. If you ever have a question, you can just email us, send us a picture, send us a question. The chart that I gave you here with all the different vegetables and flower companions, at the bottom, almanac.com/companion planting is the website. Now they have a few tabs on their companion planting where you can pull up different garden maps and garden schemes. They'll have some for raised beds, some for large in-ground gardens. So if you're just not very creative like me and you need a map and you just want to duplicate what someone else has done successfully, visit the site. I couldn't really print them. They're too small when I printed them. So if you're interested, just go to the website there at the bottom of your handout. Here's the Georgia Pest Management Handbook. Where you would go to purchase it is UGAextensionstore.com. And they usually put out a new edition every couple of years, but it doesn't change too much. So once you get the copy, it's probably good for about 5 or 6 years at least. There's also one of your handouts. There's also another chart there that I gave you. I like this one because it has incompatible. This one has companions, but this one also has a row of incompatible plants.
Welcome to your community. This is your hometown. This is Walton Entertainment. This is where you can hear from the community and those making a difference. We explore topics, local festivals, arts and entertainment, and local news. For this program and much more, visit us online at yourlocalstream.com. That's yourlocalstream.com.